I remember last night like a smudge on a pristine page. The kind you can't ignore, no matter how hard you try to rub it away. It started innocently enough. I was home again, visiting my parents for the first time in what felt like decades, though it couldn't have been more than a handful of years. Nostalgia, they say, can be a comforting lie. But it feels like an accusation when your memories don't match the reality laid before you. The house looked the same, unchanged, as if time had politely skirted around its edges. My bedroom was just as I had left it, frozen in adolescence's amber. The posters remained pinned to peeling walls with the same enthusiasm they once commanded, and the bed still bore the faint scent of my teenage life, of paperbacks, pencils, and the occasional spill of soda that stubbornly refused to leave. But the mirror was another story. I hadn't thought twice about it. Back then, it was merely a piece of glass my parents fawned over, heirloomed into our lives with stories of great-great-aunts and hand-carved frames. Now, under the dim glow of my old lamp, I stood before it again, the tarnished surface reflecting my weary, older face. It was there in those tired eyes that the night twisted my gut with the unexpected. I flicked the overhead light off, leaving the room steeped in night. There was a silence then, the kind that stretched and pulled at the edges of your mind. I settled into bed, the comforter heavy with a past it seemed loath to relinquish. I had just begun to believe in sleep's gentle approach when my eyelids, heavy and drooping, suddenly lifted. A shiver crawled across my skin, leaving its icy fingerprints in its wake. My gaze dragged itself to the mirror. The room, my room, stared back at me, everything in its place except for one chilling anomaly. A smile hovered in the depths of the glass, a smile that was not my own. The blood in my veins turned to ice as I struggled to comprehend the sight. The figure mirrored every detail of my room but held a presence of its own. It was only a smile at first, a curve of shadows lending it form with neither mirth nor malice. But slowly, as if gaining confidence, it began to reveal more. There she was, framed within the borders of the worn wood. A woman neither familiar nor entirely strange, cloaked in a nebulous nostalgia that prickled my skin. Her eyes met mine with knowing insistence, pressing against barriers of logic and touching some instinctive fear rooted deep in my gut. Every breath seemed to hang in the air too long, as if reluctant to dissipate. I forced myself to believe it was a trick of the light or a lingering fragment of dream clinging to wakening. Sleep, I thought, was all I needed, a sleep untouched by such spectral company. But retreating into the perceived safety of slumber was futile. Each time I closed my eyes, the mirror demanded acknowledgement, a macabre invitation to a dance led by fear and confusion. Her presence felt like an anchor, pulling me down into a churning sea of questions. Why me, why here? And why now, when the world beyond this old room lay mute and indifferent to my growing dread? My eyes, despite themselves, wandered back to the mirror. Her reflection, chillingly unwavering, seemed to plead with silent artifacts of despair, as though silently singing a song only I was cursed to hear. Some fleeting memories, the ghosts of childhood tales filled with family secrets and whispered legends about objects holding parts of our souls, drifted up, unbidden. My forehead collected the sheen of terror's sweat, each bead a testament to the racing possibilities. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the accursed glass. I laid there, unable to look away for what felt like forever. Was her world a part of my own? Or had something more inexplicable, unfathomable bridged her presence to my own? The night's murky catacombs held no answers, just the steady gaze of that impossible doppelganger wrapped in whispers of a life unseen. Until now. If fear had a form, it was tangible there in the silence of my old room, breathing with me, despite its absence of life. The chill in the air thickened. Her ageless visage persisted, as if night's fabric must obey her resolute unveiling. The clock on the wall ticked unfathomably slowly, each second a deafening toll that reminded me this was not a dream's momentary flirtation, but something more sinister. I lay there in silent communion with the figure, the woman in the mirror whose reflection claimed an impossible kinship with my world. I knew tonight would be the first of many sleepless vigils. What brought her forth, and what unfinished tale lay between us, remained a mystery to probe, but with a growing sense that I might not like the answers lurking behind that glass. And yet, knowing this, I could not turn away. My heart throbbed against my ribcage, a subtle reminder that fear had nestled in comfortably, prepared to stay. That night, lying in my childhood bed, shadow WS cast by streetlights danced across the walls. The mattress was firmer than I remembered, its springs creaking with every uneasy turn. Yet it was the relentless quiet that troubled me most, thick and suffocating like a heavy blanket. I gripped the sheets, wishing for the soothing hum of city traffic, anything to fill the oppressive void. Sleep was evasive, each shift of my body ushering a fresh wave of discomfort, both physical and mental. The house felt like it was breathing around me, walls expanding and contracting, a slow, deliberate rhythm. The air seemed to pulsate, pressing down, amplifying the echo of my own heartbeat. I tried to reason with my fear, telling myself it was just an old house, prone to groans and creaks. It wasn't enough. Somewhere in my gut, beneath layers of logic and hope, I sensed an unfamiliar presence. Every so often, I would glance toward the doorway, half expecting to see her standing there, the woman from the mirror. Her image simmered in my mind's eye, a laughter that never reached her eyes, as though she were part of some cruel joke. A chill crept up my spine, leaving behind goosebumps and a gnawing sense of unease. As the hours crawled by, my eyes fell shut not from the embrace of sleep, but sheer exhaustion. I woke to a soft light filtering through the thin curtains. Morning, the sensation of dread from the night before lingered, but was tempered by the mundane clarity of day. I forced myself out of bed, listening to the quiet, hoping the woman was merely a figment of a tired mind. The house was still, too still. As I moved towards the bathroom, hesitation clung to me. I held my breath as I stepped past the mirror, drawing quick glances at the reflection that seemed strangely louder than the surroundings. But it held no secrets today, just the weary face of a woman trying to reconcile her memories with the present. I exhaled slowly, annoyed by the irrational flood of relief that washed over me. It didn't matter if she wasn't there, the fear hadn't left with her. The day stretched before me, a wide expanse of possibilities limited by invisible chains. I busied myself with mundane chores, dusting off furniture and sorting through old boxes, but my thoughts kept circling back to that mirror, like a moth to a flame. Inanimate objects stared back at me, remnants of my childhood, each one whispering stories of the past. I tried to focus on their reassuring familiarity, yet the deeper my fingers burrowed into the past, the louder that internal whisper grew. Come afternoon, I found myself in the attic, that rarefied space accessible only by a creaky ladder pulling down from the ceiling. The air here was dense, filled with a dust that clung to the skin like a lover reluctant to let go. It was a repository of forgotten relics, boxes stacked like tombs of memories too precious or too painful to let go. Rummaging through, I unearthed trinkets, photos, and letters. These were echoes of lives lived and left, each piece as vital and intricate as veins beneath the skin. It was there, beneath the dull weight of an old, dusty quilt, that I found it, an antique photo album, its cover worn but intact. It called to me in a way I couldn't ignore. Settling onto the floor, I opened it carefully, the pages creaking like floorboards underfoot. Each photo was covered with a thin sheet of age-worn paper, translucent enough to hint at the shapes and shades beneath. I peeled them back one by one, fingers brushing the delicate edge between past and present. Faces greeted me, my grandparents, parents in their youth, and then my younger self. And then, unexpectedly, her. The woman in the mirror was there, poised among family, her presence a blot on an otherwise picturesque tapestry. Her face was younger but unmistakably hers, that same unsettling smile as though privy to secrets no one else could fathom. My breath hitched, a gasp caught somewhere between disbelief and recognition. She wore a familiar dress, its faded pattern one I'd seen before in old family gatherings, a dress I had believed to be my memory playing tricks on me. But here she was, undeniably real, an anomalous figure haunting the edges of every family moment, as if daring me to remember what I had long forgotten. I felt a pinprick at the base of my skull, an unpleasant tingling spreading outward, leaving trails of confusion and fear. What unsettled me more wasn't just her presence. It was the way she seemed to belong, like she was meant to be there all along. The others didn't lean away or display any sign of unease. She stood among them as though she were the fabric that held the entire patchwork together. Yet I couldn't recall ever knowing her, as if my mind had erased every trail linking her to my life. The rest of the day passed in a blur, each hour slipping through my fingers as I attempted to shake off the lingering image of her face, immortalized in sepia. I went about my tasks mechanically, the disquiet a constant hum just beneath the surface. The afternoon shadows grew longer, stretching across the floor like fingers reaching for something I couldn't see. And with each passing minute, a quiet dread settled in, hardening my resolve. I needed answers. As the sun sank beneath the horizon, painting the sky in hues of crimson and indigo, I found myself once more facing the mirror, the reflection darker now, the room obscured in twilight's embrace. I stood there, confronting my own reflection, trying to summon a courage that had always eluded me on nights like this. My fingers trembled, reaching out to touch the cool glass, as if contact could bridge the chasm between understanding and the unknown. A flicker of movement caught my eye. The woman emerged slowly, as though swimming up from depths unknown. Her eyes locked onto mine, mirroring emotions that churned within me, curiosity fused with an unfathomable sadness. Her lips parted, yet no words crossed the divide between us. Silence was her domain, and in that silence lay an unwelcome promise. I reached beneath the dresser, drawn inexplicably to a narrow strip of paper peeking out, an aged photograph. Holding it to the dim light, I recognized her again, eternally present with that knowing smile. It was dated with numbers that made no sense, the ink faint but legible enough to read a century earlier than any moment she should have belonged. The room chilled, a breeze that carried no scent but bore the weight of countless unspoken stories. I realized then what the others in those photos seemed to have known instinctively. This woman, timeless and unchanged, was not just a visitor in these images. She was the keeper, the watcher, and I was the one who had dared to forget. The lines between memory and reality blurred, leaving me stranded in an existence stitched together by fears best left unnamed. Standing there, exposed before a mirror that was no longer just glass, I knew that my life would be forever altered by the knowledge that some horrors linger at the edges of perception, waiting for the right moment to step forward. The whisperings of my childhood home came alive that night, reminding me that some histories are deeply etched into the walls we seek shelter within, shaping us in ways we cannot escape. And in the quiet honesty of a house humbly concealing its ghosts, I was left to ponder what fragment of my soul had been waiting for her all these years. That silent gaze from the mirror asked a question I wasn't ready to answer. Had there ever been a time without her watching? And if not, what would my role be now that I understood I was never truly alone? The weight of it settled in my chest, a dark secret shared between the woman in the mirror and me, waiting, biding its time. Even as the white moonlight seeped through the curtains, painting long shadows over the floor, I sat on the edge of the bed, gripping the photograph with fingers that had gone cold and numb. I'd stared for so long at the woman poised in the tarnished glass of the old mirror, and now her gaze met mine, soft yet unyielding, in every photo I'd unearthed from those dusty boxes. This house, I thought, was built on secrets. Brushing away the cobwebs of past years had only unearthed more questions, but one thing was clear: she had always been here, lurking in the corners of my life. The strange familiarity of her face was a thorn in my mind, whispering bittersweet half-memories that bore my unease like a crown of nettles. The air was thick with the scent of dust and something sharper, like age and regret. No matter where I went, I felt caught in her web, a fly in the threads of history and despair. My parents never spoke of her, never mentioned the spectral presence that seemed sewn into the fabric of our lives. Or had they? So many little moments, fragments of conversations and sidelong glances, now flitted through my head like a swarm of gnats. I walked the halls, the floorboards creaking under my feet, each step a sigh that didn't belong to me. Every shadow seemed to stretch toward me, guiding my way, drawing me deeper into the belly of this old house. Along the walls, the photographs hung like silent witnesses to my unraveling. As if she watched my every move through faded eyes, her face an anchor in time, eternally unchanging. When I stopped before the tall, gilt-framed mirror in the dining room, my own reflection stared back with a hollowness that tightened my chest. She stood just behind me, her face serene yet unspeakably sad, a fixture in the world beyond the glass. This time, her lips parted, and though there was no sound, I understood. I'd always understood. She was me and I was her, strands of the same haunting thread. Our lives were woven together, fabric of the same story, echoed through generations. A shadow of a legacy that bound me tighter than any blood tie. Looking at her was like gazing into a distorted reflection of my own soul, where past and future entwined. As dusk bled into night, I held onto the chilling clarity that this discovery carved into me. I staggered back from the mirror, my voice a raw, whispered plea, hoping for denial, wishing for a release that never came. The mirror contained truths I hadn't been ready to see, but couldn't afford to ignore anymore. She remained, a specter of what was and what might have been, her place in my family, an unyielding constant. This was no benign haunting, but a stark reality, an inheritance I hadn't asked for. As the clock on the mantel ticked toward midnight, its chime resonating through the silence, resolution dawned with an icy grip on my heart. The house was never just wood and stone. It was alive with the whispers and sighs of those who had lived here, loved here, suffered here. I pressed my hand against the cold glass, feeling the divide between worlds, wishing my touch could bring warmth to the chill that seeped through the cracking surface. But her eyes, my eyes, held a depth that promised there was more, always more, some stories unable to rest no matter how deeply they were buried. I backed away, the mirror now just an ordinary object, the room just a room. Yet the weight of history bore down with a newfound gravity. I walked away, not in defeat, but with an understanding that whatever was inescapable was also inexorable. I carried her with me, like a shadow stitched to my heels. This wasn't the end of the story, just another chapter. As I left the room, the silence closed around me, not with finality but continuity, an endless echo in a house that would outlive us all. I paused in the doorway, casting one last look over my shoulder. Her face was already fading, yet etched into my memory with indelible clarity. Returning to the world outside, I knew nothing could ever be the same. The night air wrapped around me, cool and sobering, a fresh yet fragile disguise that hummed with underlying expectation. There would be more questions, perhaps more discoveries. The moon hung heavy and watchful, casting its gaze over the forgotten corners of the world. I stepped into the night, leaving behind the house's secrets but not its shadows. The woman, my echo, my reflection, lingered in every breath of wind that rustled through the trees, in every star that glinted with knowing in the velvet sky. The question remained, was this an inheritance or a curse? In the depth of the night, as shadows pooled into one, I could feel her there, always there, just beyond sight. In the end, it wasn't the beginning or the conclusion I feared, but the continuation. The idea that perhaps this wasn't her story or mine, but ours, a seamless thread of voices carrying a truth whispered through generations that refused to be silent. I walked, the chill settling into my bones, and knew she would forever be a part of me. But now, with every step, I wondered how much of her was in the world around me, waiting patiently in every darkened corner for her story to be told.